Reminder that is patch 7.16. And as you talked about, Stress, with those AD carries, Tristana, one of the meta-defining picks, and even first pick worthy ban already.
Absolutely first pick worthy. It's a ban we're going to see throughout this series very commonly, as is the Poppy. A lot of people maybe tuning in for the first time to watch these teams will be confused. Ruin is a Poppy player. We saw it in the promotion tournament first round, worked very well. So taken off the board, here goes another AD carry, and for all the talk Minitroupax had about being banned out, it's actually Giants taking away these AD carries. Of course, we're on 7.16. Caitlyn, a little bit nerfed, but still very much a threat. Yeah,
seeing her still, despite a lot of whispers that maybe she'd been gutted, doesn't change how annoying she is with her range. Regardless, another AD carry removed from the pool, so in terms of all the AD carries with dashes and self-peel, Tristana's gone, Kalista's gone, Lucian's gone. Where does this go for Schalke?
So we got a lot of junglers like Elise available here as this first rotation if Schalke were wanting to look that way. The Lucian was a pick that Jiizuke struggled with against NIP last week. So it's a mid lane ban taken away now from Caedrel. Obviously does have impact down in that AD carry as well.
Yeah, and of course with more of those ADCs not being able to jump out of engages, Jarvan always goes up in priority, something that we saw come to fruition in the LCS a lot last weekend. So Jarvan for Schalke, Galio, Elise for Gilius and Ruin, most likely, but could go mid.
We have seen so many Galio bans on 7.16 already because of how strong Galio can be now that the matchups are a little bit weaker on the other mid laners that got banned. You look at the Orianas, the Syndra's of the world that had these nerfs, on 7.16. Now we're going to have a scaling mid lane matchup as Caedrel is locked in the Corki, and this favors Caedrel's playstyle very well. Deficio was talking about it. He has more faith in the later game out of Caedrel than he does out of Jiizuke, so I think this is now an interesting test to see how late these two teams go.
Well, this Corki's been very good for Caedrel. 5-0 this split. His KDA, 26 kills, 5 deaths, 28 assists. Phenomenal statistics. Going to round out the damage dealers for Schalke with that Xayah.
Yeah, and of course the Corki for Caedrel is one of these champions he can move between lanes very easily and effectively on, have a lot of impact. Caitlyn for Minitroupax makes a lot of sense. Even with the nerfs, it's a champion he can farm up through the early game. Maybe get a little bit of focus from Gilius down in that bottom side is something we've come to expect, and then have late game damage. This guy had 5 items at 32 minutes into the game last week on Caitlyn, and it meant nobody could stand in front of him.
Yeah, I'm really glad you bring up that Gilius showing up in bottom lane trope, because it has been something that Giants have done several times. Even though traditionally you don't necessarily need to help a Caitlyn out in lane. Let's see what they do. By the way, Minitroupax's Caitlyn has only died 3 times across 6 games. So those are some of those stats we're looking at in terms of their performance. Phase 2, Rakan banned away, obviously because Xayah is locked in for Schalke.
Yeah, another one of these picks as well that even without Xayah has been banned quite a lot. An engaged support can play the team fights very well. Easily utilizes the coin that we've seen, but we haven't seen any emphasis now on the Jannas of the world. We've started to see Lulu crop up a little bit around the globe as teams have been playing on 7.16 a little bit more, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that be the angle we see both of these teams end up going.
Okay, let's see whether we get those Ardent Sensor rushes, which we talked a lot about. Sejuani ban throws me off a little bit with Elise already being locked in. There's one of those supports, Janna, taken away along with the Blitzcrank. So support pool hit a lot, but the Sej throws me off a touch, unless they know something we don't about where that's going to go.
So Sejuani initially was discussed after the rework about a support and a top lane, but we haven't seen it very much. We've seen solo queue, but that's about it. So maybe that's something that'll unleash itself throughout the rest of the series. I wonder whether that is a little bit of pressure here at this point, where you're used to looking and saying, okay, well, Sejuani's a good champion, so let's ban him away.
It's one or the other, right?
Exactly. It's either a mistake or they know something.
Yes, I guess we will find out as the series plays out. There's the Lulu you talked about, Stress, and to round out Schalke's composition, give themselves some more poke with that Jayce and the Alistar. So a lot of range damage, a lot of squishy targets as well. How do Giants complete their comp?
Well, now we get to see where Giants end up going. They need a little bit more on the engaged side of things. When you look at, they've got an Elise for a Cocoon right now with a follow-up from Galio. If they can get somebody else that can come into the fight, the likes of a Renekton, a Camille that can lock down another target, that would give them more options to get into the fight. Would also give them a side lane presence. Of course, we know Jayce will be in the... wait. Yeah, it's Jarvan jungle. Sorry, that took me a second to pieced it all together at that point. Yeah, Jayce is up in the top lane, Camille into Jayce.
All right, so what do we think then of the Giants team composition here? Ruin, definitely a Jarvan main, definitely played a lot of Rumble. This will be the first, Gnar, and then some of the carries. So this is the first time we're seeing him on the Camille. What do you think into the matchup against Smittyj?
I think at this point, Ruin is banking on having the later game presence out in that side lane. He's going to concede the laning phase unless Gilius can get up to the top lane. And at that point, they need Ruin to be such a strong facet in the side lane, because with the Galio in the mid lane, the Caitlyn that's waiting for damage on the bottom lane, there is a little bit of a risk play in the Giants' composition. It needs to go later on into the game before they can get themselves rolling. On the other side of things, the composition from Schalke a little bit more rounded, but still good scaling here. It's not like Giants get to the late game and they win, right? You've got a Xayah, you've got a Corki, a lot of poke threat with dive on top of it as well. Jarvan Alistar goes hand in hand.
Oh, it's going to be such an interesting game to play out. Schalke's comp maybe comes online a little quicker, like you were mentioning, Stress. And I want to see how coordinated they can play with this Jayce. Not being that traditional front line. So this is for a spot back into the European LCS. Schalke knocked out last summer, where they have been in Challenger now for the entirety of the 2017 season. In spring, Giants were knocked down to the Challenger Series, and they've never looked better. I'm not going to keep ramping up the hype because we do have a very brief pause. I can see a few players just chatting to the refs on stage. So once we get some more information on that, I'll share with you.
So this is starting to look a little bit more characteristic of the teams that we were expecting coming into this. When you look at these team compositions, to go on Schalke a little bit more, they like to draft these quote-unquote losing bottom lanes where you don't have the early game presence, you don't necessarily have the push, but that scale very well into the game. Upset Norskeren, very well equipped at playing from behind. That's what we saw from them regularly. We did see them start to move a little earlier in the game with the Varuses of the AD carry world, but still, I feel like this is where they'll be the most comfortable, and I think that's why Schalke drafted this way.
Well, we'll see how well they handle themselves. It's Upset, in fact, that called the pause on the side of Schalke. It is a query regarding the masteries and runes that were loaded up with. Upset believes he may have loaded with the incorrect one. So while our league officials and referees check the footage back and double check exactly what he has loaded up with, we'll get back to you with a review. But like you said, a little bit of those nerves, a little bit of the pressure. Now, luckily for both of these teams, it's double elim and they're in the upper bracket. Right. So today's series, the winner auto-qualifies. They're in EULCS next year. The loser has one more shot tomorrow, but you don't want to go to that last match where the pressure's really, really high.
Exactly. Being in a situation where one win and you're in, you don't ever want to drop back down. So I think I like that you're talking about pressure, because Upset was a guy that maybe felt the pressure back in spring. Now, this is a storyline that has kind of lost a lot of its edge because Upset has grown a lot throughout the summer split, hasn't shown us any kind of nerves or pressure. But I think when you look at the growth of a player, Upset hasn't yet played in the LCS. And I think the fact that he had one setback in spring actually makes him a stronger player to get into the LCS this time around, because now he knows what he's playing up against.
Yeah, definitely the case. And you know, going through those trials and tribulations, it can only help in the grand scheme of things. Looking at guys like Gilius, like Memento, who have been all sorts of ups and downs over the course of their career, but still arguably in the ranks of some of the best in Europe. You know, they're still competing. I do have a quick clarification. The cause for the pause, Upset has loaded into the game with a Fervor of Battle as his keystone. He has informed league officials he believes it should have been Bloodlust. So that's what they're checking back. The referees have the ability to look back at the players' PCs and just double check exactly what is happening. So once they have run through that, we will let you know what's happening. Obviously some more water for the Giants guys. Oh, you have to. Have to indeed. Trick always stays hydrated, the G2 water boy, as some have come to call him. But this man on your screen on the far left, Gilius, is one of the more entertaining, definitely takes the showmanship to a new level, and is never afraid to share his thoughts on a matchup or a game or the state of the league.
Sometimes his own worst enemy as well, because Gilius, the meme is that he talks a lot of trash and then sometimes doesn't always live up to the hype. The thing is, we're always in for an explosive jungle matchup here, because Memento is very much the same. Whenever we've had a Memento in an interview, in articles, Memento's always talking a little bit of trash himself. Always very fun to watch. And these guys, I think, very similar in the way that a lot of people underestimate them for a while, and they had a couple of setbacks, and now they've become more well-rounded players. I think that was the real forging of Challenger this split, was you took players that maybe could only play a carry or could only play the early game, and you rounded them out. Now they're playing tanks, they're playing later game, a little more strategic focus, and I think that has been one of the real additions to both junglers and both teams overall.
Yeah, and we'll see whether or not it helps them out. Stress, I have heard from the production team, the information being relayed from league officials, that upset did misclick. And as it was player error, we will be playing through and we will not remake the game. So some of those nerves, some of the pressure may be getting to the guys. Now, admittedly, of all the mistakes to make, that is not the worst of them. Loading up with AP runes and masteries could have been much more damning.
Right, I think for Upset, though, this will obviously be a little bit of a moment where he has to maybe reconsider a couple of exchanges. It will give him slightly more damage at certain points with prolonged trades. However, he doesn't have that sustain to rely on anymore. So that is the impact of this runes and, well, the masteries misselection at this point. So we're early on in the game. We already kind of laid the groundwork. Upset and Norskeren should theoretically lose the laning phase. Against Caitlyn, Lulu, very difficult to deal with in the lane. And we'll see if Gilius revisits that bottom lane again, because that's where he likes to spend time. They like to bring Ruin down to the bottom lane as well.
We'll see whether or not Ruin can handle this matchup as well. First time on Camille this summer. And obviously with the Elise, we always talk about it. It's one of the oldest stories in competitive league. Where will those early ganks go? How successful will they be? And how much of an advantage can Gilius give one or more lane? There's 2 teleports for the Giant squad versus the single on Schalke. So they're going to have some of that side lane pressure as the game plays out, and those parties decide to erupt. Almost always in the bottom lane if you're a Giants fan.
At this point, that would be the best thing that could happen for them if they can get the Caitlyn ahead from Minitroupax. So you just saw both junglers starting on the bottom half of the map. Corki and Jayce went actually in to check the Raptor camp just to ensure that there was nobody on it, as the game opens back up once again. So if Gilius can get himself into the game early on, that would be a good benefit. It's always now to do with how the lane pushes, especially in the middle lane now, for if we see one of the junglers invade. Jiizuke on this Galio shouldn't have a lot of trouble against Caedrel. Both of these champions received nerfs on 7.16 that we've seen have an effect. Caedrel, his base AD got lowered, a little bit less harassment in the lane that he can output up against Jiizuke. But Jiizuke's changes for Galio were on the ultimate. The cooldown increase later on in the game, that's the focus where that's going to be. Also the amount of damage reduction applied to the ally. So early game changes don't really affect the Galio in a negative way.
Oh, the Cocoon not finding a target means Memento is going to fancy this trade. Gilius goes into Spider form, repels to the Blast Cone, and is able to escape. But what a difference that Cocoon could have made.
Exactly. That's always the fear with an Elise. If you miss the Cocoon, suddenly your trading potential goes through the floor. You don't have enough damage. But look, Memento now was spotted. This is something that we have seen teams backfire with, is when they think they've got a small lead here and go aggressive into the enemy jungle. That Cocoon's back available again, but mid lane, heavy trades.
Well, even with some of those AD nerfs, Caedrel's still having a great time. Obviously, Jiizuke needs few items before he can stand toe-to-toe with Caedrel, get a few more points in that queue for wave clear. But looking at the minimap, Stress, vision triangle setup for Schalke inside Giants half of the map. There's that ward spotting out the Krug, so Memento's going to move in and try contest.
Yeah, Memento will try and just at least push Gilius back away, but now we got this bottom lane trade that all stems from the fact that Giants are trying to push this lane as much as possible. Jiizuke's teleport actually allows him to drop in health and drop in CS somewhat, because it'll be offset by this Caedrel having to run the cleanse against the Elise. Obviously don't want to get caught out in that middle lane too frequently. And that's where Jiizuke will actually now stabilize a lot of this matchup. 3 ticks on the Corrupting Potion still left. Now has the Dark Seal to augment that as well. Should allow Jiizuke to stabilize for a little bit longer, get to that level 6 point, and start looking to make plays across the map. Yeah,
make plays across the map. We can see the duo lanes trading. Somewhat as expected here, the Caitlyn Lulu bullying the Xayah Alistar, and Minitroupax versus Upset. Definitely 2 of the very exciting AD carries in Challenger at the moment, and 2 of the guys who are really showing up at all stages of the game. You can see great KDAs, damage percentage heavily in favor of Minitroupax for his squad as one of the primary carries, Stress.
And that was a big addition to Giants in the first round of the promotion tournament. This extra damage, typically Minitroupax does a decent amount, but this is a carry potential, and he really has stepped up where it is important. This guy has come from almost nowhere.
Yeah.
Previously, he didn't really have a following, didn't have a whole lot of people talking about him unlike Upset, and that's where this is one of these key matchups between the two of them, because these are the headline stars now for the Giants and Schalke, and they both have such a big impact on the teams.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Cocoon this time round connects with Memento. Thunderlords puts some additional damage down as Jiizuke gets poked out by Caedrel, and of course Upset, you know, has played on the international stage. I am Gyeonggi a while ago. Ruin and Smittyj keep trading back and forth. Smittyj not going to look for that shock blast. But yes, very exciting to see how these two lanes grow. It's +8 CS in favor of Minitroupax. Jiizuke +10. That teleport helping him out. And the laning phase has started exactly as expected in terms of the matchups.
Yes, the one we haven't discussed a little bit more is the top lane matchup, and I think we have to switch focus over to Schalke for now and talk about Smittyj, because this is a guy a lot of people put down. Coming into the matchup against Kikis, said no, Kikis will take the edge here. But this is a guy that dominated Kikis, even with Amazing spending a massive percentage of time up in the top lane in their series against Mysterious Monkey. Smittyj just outperformed and has been such a good threat on Schalke's side that he has been able to open up games. Mid lane is where the real threat now is.
Oh, a real cheeky juke from Jiizuke. Uses that Justice Punch to sidestep the knockup. Really just cool, calm, collected. Not worried at all. And to go back to that Smittyj point, I mean, he has been one of the primary carries for Schalke for a while now.
Yeah.
And showed up big time last week in the series that went all the way to 5 games.
Yeah, of course, pulled out the Jax a couple of times in the matchup. Side lane threat was very empowered by Schalke. Now you look at this matchup, Jayce into Camille. Jayce will have the early game impact. I'm now interested to see how this Bramble Vest affects the matchup, because top lane is where we've started to see more Bramble Vest than ever since it got released. This should reduce a lot of the damage that Smittyj is going to put out here and maybe make it more difficult for him to push. But a Bramble Vest alone won't give Camille the ability to push the side lane. You still need 2 items on top of this to really take control. So Ruin needs to wait longer in this matchup before he'll be able to push Smittyj back out.
Let's see whether or not he gets the time. Because, of course, now Caedrel's level 6. Going to get access to that package fairly shortly and then start moving around the map. When you combo that with a Jarvan or an Alistar, depending on which lane you want to combo, there's a lot of damage that can come down. And for Giants, if they're caught napping, that's where it goes down. So, as we get closer to 8 minutes, it's a small gold lead for Giants. They've got themselves CS advantages in 2 lanes. +10 CS for Caitlyn Lulu. It feels good, but is it good enough? That's the question I'm wondering.
In Giants' minds, it is good enough, because they're ahead in the laning phase. They're creating pressure on the bottom lane by pushing out. They haven't been punished even for a summon or anything in this laning phase. They need the Caitlyn to just slowly farm up to get as many items as possible before the fight. The one thing Schalke need to do to upset this is get the Jarvan ultimate on Minitroupax. Get that flash and do it again. That's the key factor, is a lower mobility AD carry like Caitlyn must receive that kind of pressure in fights. Otherwise, Galio will peel, Lulu will peel. Even Camille, if she comes to the fight, will be able to at least provide a front line.
Let's see how effective Minitroupax's 90 caliber net will play out. Unfortunately for Giants, it is a Cloud Drake as the first dragon. A lot of those Gilius ganks to the bottom lane then follow on to dragon plays. That's not the most valuable. Hearing a lot of calls as Gilius gets jumped on. He's going to be able to flash over the wall. Repels to the dragon and get dunked for first blood.
Gilius was trying to get towards the bottom side, but look, Schalke just follow up, multiple flashes used, but they know it's all for this first blood. Now it gives them full control over the bottom side. You saw the wards that were already there to spot Gilius out. Giants play right into Schalke's hands. Man,
that was just instantaneous flashes. Memento and Norskeren completely on the same page. So, first blood to Schalke in the upper bracket here of the promotion tournament. Memento will go very low to Dragon, but will smite it for some HP and pick up the first Drake of the game at 929. while Ruin, with his Bramble Vest, still gets chunked down to 55 HP.
Maybe without some of that extra armor, that might have been a whole lot worse for Ruin. So I want to praise Schalke on the quick reaction from this. First of all, sadly we don't have a mini-map, so mid lane is getting pushed out by Schalke here, so they know Gilius is pushed too far up. That allows the roam from Caedrel, the roam from Norskeren, instant double flash right on top of the spider. Maybe a little bit overkill, but still, it's first blood at this point. Schalke get the kill, get everything that goes with it with the dragon as well. All comes from the fact they had mid lane pushing.
It just looked so good to see Jarvan coming down with a Cataclysm and the headbutt pulverize combo from Norskeren. There we go, the Cataclysm. I like that one. Stress, I have a quick stat for you. Just because it's teams I'm not super familiar with doesn't mean I don't have some interesting ones. Did you know that when Schalke get first blood, they have an 88% win ratio? If you didn't, I just told you. Now, that's a little bit of a fudge stat because this is a team that is 14-5. They got a pretty good win ratio anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's a good start to this matchup, and Schalke then take the lead. Well, Jiizuke is going to get that torn down onto Caedrel. There's the Valkyrie we talked about, an insta-flash. So, Stress, all those summer spells and early plays you wanted to see from Schalke, they've got them aplenty. Yeah,
now they've even got a tower from it. The teleport was used by Smittyj to get himself to the bottom lane, and you speak about the first blood going into win percentage. I mean, that's just how good Schalke have been at snowballing games. Both of these teams have been very good when playing from ahead. It was only really in the first round of the promotion tournament we saw Schalke be challenged a lot. Their series against Mysterious Monkeys was the first time they really got dragged later with big difficulties, and I think that has kind of given Schalke another edge here because look, they've got the early game advantage, they know how to hang on to it, and they've drafted well even for late game scaling here, whereas Giants, they basically are going to have to rely on Minitroupax a lot to stay in this game.
Yeah, and it's going to take a long time to power up. In the space of a minute and a half, Schalke got first blood, first tower, first dragon, and a secondary tower as well. The stats team just pinged me as well and said when Schalke get first tower, they have a 90% win rate, which is insane. But I want to talk about win rates really quick because both Schalke and Giants have been phenomenal throughout the course of the summer splits. If we actually just look at the win-loss for Schalke throughout Challenger Series, Summer, and Promos, you'll see they got 14 wins and 5 losses here for Schalke. And that's an impressive run. But it's only beaten by Giants if we look at their win-loss. With that one blemish, the little loss in the middle, was in fact Schalke.
Yeah, exactly. Those two downwards trending lines were just the losses to Schalke. Without that, it would have been an unblemished record up until NIP. But you can see that series from Schalke versus Giants was quite an unorthodox series. We had things like the Yasuo top lane coming out. Schalke kind of dug into a bag of tricks to try and figure out how to play against the Giants. And that's not the same Schalke I see right now that is playing up against Giants. Schalke, a lot more composed, a lot more standard with what we've seen from them over the last couple of weeks. And I think this is the Schalke people expect to see, looking very crisp and clean.
And it's just so exciting when the two squads that come from Challenger, former LCS teams, took down current LCS teams, and now one of them will re-qualify after the best of 5. So how do Giants recover? They're stealing a blue buff. They're pushing down this top lane with Minitroupax's Caitlyn. Ardent Sensor completed for Jactroll, so throw down that help picks and the Ardent Sensor buff, and Minitroupax is already going to be hitting like a truck. So I want to keep an eye on how much damage he can put down.
So how do Giants get back in was the question you asked during that. And Giants, we already said they're relying on Minitroupax. That's one way of getting back in, is waiting, biding their time. The active play they can make here is try and crack mid lane tower, because if they have a lot of presence through the top half of the map, they can control the area around Baron very effectively. The problem is, here comes the engage from Schalke. They can see this play coming.
All right, that's a catch onto Minitroupax. Great cocoon from Gilius. Cataclysm doesn't even come down. Memento's flag and drag read like a book. Minion wave has been cleared out, and the Rift Herald unable to take the tower down, but Giants get the first kill of the game.
The back and forth from the Cocoons. One missed one earlier goes awry for Gilius and punishes him. One perfect one in this one now opens up mid lane as another attempt here for Giants, but without being able to get another kill, they're not able to crack further because Ruin does not want to use his TP. They want to maintain any kind of advantage in the bottom lane they can, try and farm Ruin back up into this game because he's going to be that side lane threat. This play was read quite a while ago already. Smittyj was on his way up from the bottom lane with Corki. They get the indicator Rift Herald is coming, spawn it behind the tower just that it comes in and makes sure they get the damage down. But from here, good response from Schalke initially. Cocoon connects and then stuns Jarvan after he lands. And from there, Schalke, they've lost some of their front line. Smittyj not feeling confident enough to come in. They didn't actually end up getting the tower from that for Giants, but it's so low, they will eventually get it.
Yeah, so much damage from the Rift Herald. And you mentioned it just before the replay started. Ruin down in CS, nearly 30 to Smittyj right now, thanks to some of the plays. And Giants at 15 minutes, just marginally behind. It's around 700 gold. Next Dragon's a mountain. You absolutely want to contest that one. And let's see whether or not Giants will get themselves into a position where they can.
But there's a 1,300 gold lead on Smittyj because of some of the gold he's had from towers as well. That's what makes this very difficult, is Ruin still needs more time. He's only at Tiamat, Ninja Tabi, and the Bramble Vest, so he's not confident enough to stand out in that side lane. And I wonder whether at this point the Bramble Vest is going to end up hurting him because it's delayed his build by 900. Like, it's good if you're against the Jayce for a long time, but if you're desperately trying to get to 2 items, it actually does start to slow you down. I still think it will be useful throughout the game, but I wonder whether Ruin will be delayed because of it.
And whether they're going to have enough time for it to be useful, right? On a clock, as Mountain Drake secured uncontested here, Norskeren an upset, keeping several members of Giants busy in the mid lane as that tower still stands. Ruin with the precision protocol trying to shove this wave down. No Sheen to speak of, no Trinity Force yet, and Ruin should be able to escape here unscathed. Just a little bit of chip damage. Second Dragon of the game to Schalke, and they're continuing to pull ahead. Yeah,
Schalke continuing to get ahead. This kind of composition, very difficult to deal with when ahead. Ruin's going to have to try and get out flashes to get himself away. I know people will look at Schalke's composition and say, hey, there's a Bramble Vest there because everybody's AD. You've got to keep in mind, Corki is going to be that later game threat that deals a lot of magic damage. Most of his damage that comes through is magic damage. So even if you do stack armor, you've still got to deal with that Corki threat.
Well, Corki threat indeed. Caedrel almost picking up his Trinity Force, sitting on 1,000 gold, so should be able to finish that the next time he backs. Giants are going to look to trade towers. Jiizuke in the bottom lane, Smittyj in the top lane, and actually a little bit unawares. They're going to lose mid tower as well. So it's a 2-for-1 trade in favor of Giants. Caedrel's being dove, running fairly low on mana.
Here comes the rest of Giants as well, though.
Yeah, this is going to be an easy tower dive for Giants. Jiizuke's going to tank it up, looks to get the smash down, gets the flash as well, and ace in the hole, secures the kill. Well played, and they'll secure the tower.
So, Giants secure 2 towers. The top lane push from Schalke is trying to secure the second for them as well. And with a Jayce, you can just hypercharge that tower down very quickly off the W. I agree, if initially it looked like Schalke weren't reacting in time. I think they had assumed Caedrel could hold that lane a little more comfortably, just kill the minions. But as soon as Giants start trending down towards the bottom side, Schalke are just trying to pick up anything, and it ends up, they do still lose out on the tower trade, but it's 3 towers for 2. That's a lot of gold just swung into both teams, ready to set up our first real big fight of the game.
Oh, it's so exciting. We're getting close to 20 minutes. Giants with a comp that scales very well. I mean, both squads do. It's an even game. 900 separates them. Very, very close indeed. And just, it's like chess pieces. You know, you read the map, and Giants, they get a very good play into Caedrel. His Valkyrie was interrupted.
Yeah, the important thing there, Caedrel's Valkyrie is interrupted, so he can't get through to get the Phosphorus bomb out onto the minions. He's looking to just cut the wave and push back as far from the tower. So Jiizuke can't damage him under tower, but he took too much in the beginning of the trade. That means Giants are able to just surround him, get the tower down very easily, and just a good read by Jiizuke on that pathing into the lane denies any kind of defensive play out from Schalke.
It's just crazy. 2 towers for 2, in fact. because both of the top lane turrets were taken by Schalke. So crazy tower trade. Kills secured by Giants. And now we're moving into the mid-game. All right, Minitroupax, 1 kill, 1 assist. Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire Cannon, and a Lulu for support. The first makings of Trinity Force for Ruin, while Caedrel's got his Upset working towards that Essence Reaver. So the power spikes are coming in, slowly but surely. It just feels like nobody really wants to stand toe-to-toe with Minitroupax if Jactroll is around.
Somebody will have to, though, and it's not necessarily toe-to-toe. They're going to have to just try and smother him as much. Memento, if he cannot get that ultimate down onto the Caitlyn to burn the flash, that's a massive problem from Schalke because he is basically their primary engage here. Now, there's a lot of follow-up crowd control that comes after the Jarvan. If any of that sticks as well, they should be able to kill Minitroupax. But look, with the amount of damage reduction from Galio, the ultimate shields, exhausts on Jactroll that can actually keep the Caitlyn alive, we're getting to a very deadly point in the game here because that Ardent Sensor will empower the Caitlyn. It's not enough that on 3 items she's that massive threat, but still, it just makes it even stronger. And Minitroupax has gone unfazed throughout this entire game.
Yeah, no real threats just yet. Upset 0-0-0, opposite number. We're now getting to the point where Upset can start to add a lot of value. Got some great CC, got some kiting tools, and throughout the course of summer, Upset's team fighting has been very impressive, has been a reliable damage dealer for Schalke, following in the likes of Smittyj and Caedrel.
There's an interesting dynamic at play in this game with these two compositions that go later on, because Smittyj and Schalke will trade.
Ooh. And all of that armor is not helping yet for Ruin.
Not a lot yet helping for Ruin. But so, we're split up on the side lane. You just saw that Jayce can easily take the trade now that he's got Black Cleaver on top of the Blade of the Ruin King. Schalke will do this for quite a while now. Push out both side lanes, try and drag a secondary member of Giants out while the TPs aren't there. And that means Giants' composition is split up. If Jiizuke is not in place, if Ruin isn't able to get to a fight fast enough, then Minitroupax might not have enough survivability. Giants want to try and kite back from a lot of fights with this Caitlyn keeper safe, but they don't have much primary engage themselves. It's a cocoon to try and land a pick, so they're almost waiting for Schalke to make a mistake in order to capitalize on it.
Oh, such a difficult scenario to be in. We've seen when teams don't have initiation tools, how frustrating the mid-game can be, and that's very comfortably where we're headed.
Yeah, very hands-off is how this mid-game portion is going to be. Unless Smittyj feels he can kill Ruin, that'll be the only one.
The thing is, even with side lane pressure from the likes of a Camille or a Jayce in this case, with 4 towers down a side, there's actually not that many easy or safe towers that you can push down. So, Stress, we're heading into the mid to late game. Which team's macro do you prefer? Now, not necessarily in terms of the comps, just historically and what you've seen. Schalke have been maybe a little more proactive at times, but Giants seem to have answers as well.
I do like Giants when it comes to playing later. I know Deficio favors Schalke on the way they play, and I think both teams you can make strong arguments for. I like the way that Giants actually team fight and look to play out the rest of the games because they're very difficult to break apart when they actually have a composition that works for them. And this is the type of composition I think favors Giants in the late game. They put everything on the Caitlyn. They're able to just hold through fights, and that's why I think it favors them. But certainly, that's not a done deal.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely not. You need one stray rocket, one root from Upset, and all of a sudden, Minitroupax is a goner. So we're heading to 25 minutes, looking at the items. Knight's Vow, now picked up for Memento, to complement that Cinderhulk. Baron is absolutely going to be a possibility. Both teams have got really good damage, really good ways of taking that down relatively quickly, and a tank who can sit toe-to-toe with it.
We are in a phase of basically ping-pong, though, because no side laner wants to push too far past the midpoint of the map. You can step to this area, but look, there's no wards for Caedrel up on the top side through the jungle, so anybody could have been going there. Ruin could have been heading top side, which is why Caedrel just backs away. He just gets a little bit more health and mana back and will resume control of the top lane when he actually has a safe moment to do so. The same will happen on bottom lane, although Smittyj, I say that, he just placed the vision for himself. Gilius catches Caedrel.
All right, Ace in the hole tags him out. Valkyrie gets to safety. Caedrel did use the cleanse. Cataclysm comes down. Ruin buys a few seconds of time with a Hextech ultimatum and is shut down in his own jungle by the 2-on-1.
That was a lot used by Ruin, and we were just talking about how it wouldn't be up past the halfway point, but look at the wards that Smittyj had placed. Ruin, although he's got the Trinity Force, is still not strong enough to fight against the 2.5 item Jayce, and Smittyj takes full control. This is the aggressive Smittyj that we have seen in Challenger Series for the Summer Split, and it's showing up once again.
Yeah, the Smittyj that silenced all critics against Gilius, stepped up to the challenge and swatted him away. Swatted amazing away with him at times. Smittyj's got a 60 CS lead. Quickly check how much gold he's sitting on. It is a lot, but I can't see the number right now.
Currently
1,600 gold. Thank you, observers, for toggling that one. So he's definitely going to be able to complete next items and come back even more powerful. Here's a replay of how it started.
So it just placed Vision up on the top side. He had the control ward in Tribush, saw Ruin coming into the lane, and although Ruin puts up a decent trade at first, Smittyj just bashes him away, knows he has Memento on his way. And Ruin used ult and flash to try and get out of that. Now I can understand why you're trying to escape the situation, but now you've got no flash again. You're up against Jayce, who wants to run right up to you. It's the same thing happening again. Oh no,
look
Ruin.
Look at the mini-map.
Oh,
Memento's coming as well. Flash available, not even going to get needed. Cataclysm comes down. No, it wasn't even used, in fact. Just the knockback from the hammer. Another kill onto Ruin.
Ruin didn't get over the wall to safety, couldn't get himself out alive, and that's the same thing now happening within 1 minute of each other. Ruin just walks back to the lane, walks back to die. And this is the problem that Giants are having, that Schalke are exploiting beautifully.
Yeah.
Giants only have 1 damage threat now. Schalke have 3, and they're able to take almost any fight that they want. And that is where Schalke have got this composition that just fits their playstyle very well, and they're doing well with it too.
And you talked about a composition, talked about playstyle. Gotta say it, Gilius Elise, 0-1-1, did not see very many attempts. Actually saw him challenging and getting caught by Memento several times and losing out, but Memento played the early game well. Lots of deep vision, lots of challenges.
And that's the difficulty with Elise when you do basically a level 3 around the Rift Scuttler, miss the cocoon, and you have to get pushed back into your jungle. You start losing ground, losing camps. You can't gank lanes as effectively. That's the problem with Elise from behind, is she is just a cocoon bot as it goes further on. Here is the attempt at a cocoon bot.
Okay, Unbreakable Will comes out. Norskeren's ultimate saves his life. So despite the cocoon bot connecting with the cocoon, there was not enough follow-up damage to burn through an Alistar. So Giants continue to hemorrhage the lead. They're down 3 Drakes, and unfortunately for Schalke, the next one is yet another Cloud. Now, I say unfortunately, 3 Clouds and the ability to reposition between lanes, that's exceptionally useful when you are ahead and you're pushing this vision, much like Smittyj is currently doing.
Especially when you got the Mountain Drake on top of it as well. It means whether you're Baron, whether you're towers, whatever you're going up to, you will get there and punish it very quickly. Now, there is a couple of more hopes for Giants. Gilius, cocoon does land.
Remember, no Unbreakable, gets tagged up by the Glitzo Lance. Here comes the grand entrance from Jiizuke, lands down. Featherstorm already used by Upset. No additional follow-up. Calls the blades backwards. Upset looking to sidestep. Ace in the hole is eaten by Norskeren, and the only summoner spells used, teleport for Smittyj, heal for Upset.
Giants were a little fractured on that exchange, weren't quite following Minitroupax on his attacks early on. Here comes the attempt at the re-engage.
All right, flash away from Jactroll, the Winds of War, tagging up multiple members of Schalke. Do they fancy themselves a shot at the Baron? They know that they pushed away Jactroll. They know Gilius is low, and they're going for it.
Yeah, Jiizuke's going to try and get over the wall here, but look, Gilius is going to have to throw himself at this to try and steal.
Not going to happen. Gilius goes down once again, and Schalke get Baron. They're looking to chase further. The Shock Blast from Smittyj might be enough to take down Jactroll, and it does! Snipes him from mid lane. Now in a 5-on-3 with Baron, Schalke are sieging.
Yeah, Schalke are going to be able to push for a lot of damage here. Remember, they had a big wave stacked in the bottom lane. That is now being cut by Ruin, but it's top side they're going for. Schalke trying to just close out an inhibitor tower here. Minitroupax is so low.
Man, Smittyj is hitting shot after shot. Flashes forward to try and interrupt the heroic punch, or the justice punch rather. Manages to throw down the W to finish off the inhibitor, and they back away. So Schalke got supers in the top lane. They're taking down the turret in the inner mid lane. and they have a 5,000 gold lead as we approach 30 minutes.
Schalke had maintained a lot of pressure on Giants leading up to this whole passage of play that meant, first of all, Giants had about 1,700 gold on each of their carries that they needed to get back and spend, but Giants hit the cocoon, got almost baited by themselves into a fight that Gilius dropped low from, and this is where we pick it back up for the replay. Gilius low, he does get the smite off on Baron, and it survives on 129 health.
Oh.
Split seconds between them. Remember, there's a 2-level disadvantage in the jungle that goes in favor of Schalke, so that was such a close steal attempt out of Gilius. Minitroupax, he takes the shock blast, but it's enough to kill Jactroll on the side, and here's where Schalke are just going to be relentless. With the Baron buff, pushing on multiple lanes, Giants' only hope is Minitroupax being in that team fight and putting everything on him, because he's got a lot of damage still, not even opting towards the Lord Dominic's, but still, he's the only real carry left in this game.
Well, the man who does have Lord Dominic's is Smittyj, along with Ghostblade, along with Black Cleaver, along with Blade of the Ruined King. We're not even 30 minutes in, he's decided not to upgrade his boots because he's got 2 clouds. Not a few times it works out, but look at that. Accelerated shock blast from the side. That tags up Gilius. The inhibitor turret will fall in the mid lane. And here comes the engage from Ruin. Puts down the Hextech ultimatum, flashes forward, but doesn't do a lot. Jiizuke follows in with the entrance and feathers thrown out, backwards. That's the stun. Upset gets another for Schalke. And the inhibitor's exposed. 4 members down. This is turning into a crushing defeat for Giants.
Yeah, Schalke looking incredibly strong in game 1, drafting more carries, facilitating their lanes as well, making sure Smittyj was ahead in this matchup. Ruin has never got in the game, and it means Giants haven't had a second carry. Not enough out of Minitroupax and the rest of Giants in game 1 to hang on.
No, first rotation, Elise did not gank early enough. Last pick, not enough, and Schalke score first against Giants.
Good performance out of Schalke, recognizing that if they can put top lane ahead, get Smittyj as much presence as he can possibly have on the game, then Caedrel and an upset will just be fine in the late game. They'll get there, they'll be able to take over, and that's exactly what worked out well.
The man that helped score first, Smittyj, the last to leave the stage. What a great performance. Do you know, it just, in this game, it never felt like Giants got rolling.
No.
It never felt like their composition got started or got into a position where it could combo. And I just have to call out Gilius again on that Elise. Didn't find opportunities. Or was shut down by Memento. It's a little bit of both.
I think a lot of that, it was shut down by Memento in the early game. And then when you have a losing top lane matchup, a scaling mid lane matchup, and a bottom lane that, while it is going well for you, is so far pushed you can't get things working. There aren't too many avenues available on the map. I think that's a game they'll look back and say, okay, maybe we pick the Renekton to win the top lane, try and take over, and then bring the Elise up. So it kind of was the composition, almost letting down the jungle strategy at the same time. And I think that's something they can fix for game 2.
Yes, I agree with that entirely. It's something you mentioned, the laning phase for the first 10 minutes. It played out literally as scripted in terms of the matchups. What does this do for confidence now for Giants as a squad that, you know, they didn't really get started. They looked arguably better last week. They've had a better win-loss, but Schalke's the team that 2-0'd them. Schalke's the team that crushed them in the regular season.
I think we might see Giants kind of go a little bit different on their bans here. They banned so many AD carries.
Yes.
They even banned the Lucian coming out here. I wonder whether they'll take away something like the Xayah that we've seen out of Upset a whole
3
bunch.
AD carries, 2 supports. I mean, all 5 bans to the bottom lane, and Upset wasn't the reason they lost the game.
And the difficult thing now, really we have to look at it, is the likelihood now, we have got a couple of minutes before sides get locked in. It's Schalke's selection.
Right.
Schalke will likely pick red side here. They will likely then pick for top lane and give Smittyj a good matchup. We saw it in their series last week, so that's what they're now dealing with.
Yeah, that's right. Giants, they picked red side this game, it backfired. So Schalke, they're on their way to grabbing a seat back on the ULCS. Here's Dracos and Deficio for more in game 1.
Thank you very much, QuickShot. The first thing that we want to take a look at is picks and bans, and specifically the strategy that Giants put themselves into, and that, of course, is going to come down to, as you mentioned, the Elise pick coming in defines a lot of what the team wanted to do in the early game. Martin, I know you had some pretty strong thoughts on it.
Well, obviously, we know what Elise wants to do, you know, get laners ahead in the early game, and you need to be super active, and you need to pick the correct lanes to play around, and this is where I felt like Giants' comp went against the playstyle of the team, because when they pick Elise and then the Camille top lane, that's a combination where you need to play around the Camille. It's not a great matchup against Jayce on its own. You have a bit of gank setup with the Camille stun and then the Cocoon, but when your jungler is then spending all his time on the bottom side, then this draft doesn't really connect with what you actually want to do as a Giants team.
And we have to give some credit over to Memento. He did play a very aggressive
100%.
early game to shut down any kind of level 3 early support ganks. But at the same time, we saw Gilius almost immediately, once one gank failed top lane, just go, okay, I'm never going back. We're going to bottom lane. It's never going to happen again. And that led us to kind of our first blood setup where we're like, Gilius playing on the bottom side, maybe when it wasn't the right choice. As we get that replay up, we can look at exactly what went down here and why kind of some of these issues appeared.
Yeah, so what's very important to look at is how up in the mid lane, just top of your screen, notice how it's the Corki actually pushing the Galio. This means Gilius does not have a free pass into the jungle because his mid laner can't follow properly. His own bot lane is also really far away, so this invade is kind of like what I like to call really high risk and very low reward. Because the greatest reward you get is you kill a control ward. That's about it. So he's basically on the bottom side dying. Meanwhile, this is happening top lane. Remember how we said this Camille would kind of struggle against the Jayce?
Might need a little bit of support there, yeah.
Yeah, this kept happening over and over and over.
And we saw the Bramble Vest come out, and when you're a Camille and you have to skip your Tiamat or your Sheen in the early game to itemize Bramble Vest because you are so far behind, it feels like there's really no options left for you.
Why not just pick a tank then? You're still going to lose the lane, but at least you're going to be useful in team fights. Like, it was kind of weird for me with Giants' strategy with Ruin up in the top lane, because if you do want to pick him a matchup like this, play around him for once. If you don't want to do that, never give him a matchup like this, because it will just end up like we're going to see in the next replay.
Yeah,
that is a tough
we can bring this up now. We want to take a look at Smittyj, some of the fantastic almost 1v1 opportunities that he got, and more importantly, kind of the thought process behind what he's looking to do in each of these plays.
Yeah, so basically, in a situation like we have here, as Smittyj, you're winning the side lane, you're a strong split pusher. You have a few choices of exactly what it is you want to do. There's one choice, which is call over your jungler and try and kill the guy you see right here, this little split pusher. And then you try and hard push up this top lane. Or at the bottom lane. The other option is when you have a push like this one, you start moving towards mid lane because there's still a mid lane tower over here you want to kill. And when this guy can actually move and appear behind them and poke them and force them off, they need to back away and you can kill the mid lane tower. So there are two really good choices because Smittyj is winning. He goes for the I want to be the carry choice. So when we roll the clip, you're going to notice how it's Memento who's been called from the mid lane to go join Smittyj in the side lane and then try and punish Ruin for feeling that he can actually push almost to his own tier 1 tower. Jesus Christ, disrespecting the Jayce. And obviously he ends up getting destroyed 1v1 and then Memento secures the whole thing.
Nothing that you can do, even with the Hextech ultimatum, not a lot of options yet. And of course, this wasn't the only 1v1 that came out. We want to take a look at the second one as well, and specifically one of the really strong micro interactions that when Jayce gets ahead, he can abuse so aggressively. Yeah,
notice how Smittyj is not using his E in hammer form just yet. He's like, there's one thing I need to interrupt, and that is the Camille jump. When she, connects to a wall and she wants to appear on the other side, you can interrupt that as a Jayce. It's one of the reasons I really hated this 1v1 for Ruin, and I felt so bad for him. So when we roll the clip, you're going to notice how Smittyj has been saving it. Bam! Smacks her right there. She gets stopped. She can't get away, and she just doomed.
You try to hope for the best, but at this point, you're bleeding out of your top lane. It feels like there's not a whole lot of options left for Giants now as we look forward to Deficio. I gotta say, it feels like draft changeups are the biggest thing because in this game, I feel like Giants kind of out of the gate gave themselves a way harder game than they needed to with the draft that they chose to go for.
Yeah, I think Giants lacked easier win conditions to try and execute. Because when you're stuck in this situation we just saw here where your Camille is losing, of course, and getting pushed in, you need then to have like a really strong 4-man group that you can like hard engage on the enemy team. So when Smittyj is split pushing, you engage on them in the mid lane. They had things like Lulu and Elise. Like, there's no hard engage here. So they couldn't even start a fight.
There's one Cocoon, Martin. Don't you ever say
There's one Cocoon. That's it. They could not start a fight anywhere. So they were just losing in the side lane and going even in the mid lane without really applying pressure. And I actually think Giants played okay despite the tough comp they had. But that is a good change I want to see. I think Gilius on a big tanky jungler where he can just be super strong in team fights and still have a bit of an early game presence might be better than the Elise pick. Because if you're just going bot lane anyway, it's very easy to ward against that early and stop Elise from snowballing.
Yeah, we saw Memento very equipped to do it, but we'll